And we're live. We are live. This is Senate Finance. This is April 17th. And we're going to hear from Mike Fisher at 585 because he won't be here next week. And I want to give him a chance to weigh in. So we will take Bill up next week. And then we are going back to 9:33 and 9:49. And we will get those bills out of here today. And if it's still daylight, I might put off 7:10 and let you go home. We'll see. So Mike, he's here.
Good afternoon. Mike Fisher, healthcare advocate. Thanks for giving me an opportunity to come in. Yes, I'll be out of town next week, so good luck. To talk about H585. I am happy to respond to any questions about any sections of the bill, but I'm going to focus on 3 of them. And those are the sections about Blue Cross Blue Shield board members, the health sharing ministries section, and the association health plan section.
And we do have Jen coming in to talk about association health plan.
Okay, great.
That was what Mike is also an expert on
I
association.
spent just a little time on this.
Yes.
And honestly, I want to talk about the AHP sections, but I want to mention the other ones because there's been discussion. And so the HCA is generally supportive of the bill. We're supportive of the bill with one small exception on we do support the gubernatorial appointment of 2 members to the Blue Cross board.
Who would you like to remove?
And
Are you volunteering for the board?
Sorry. I don't think I should be paid for it. No. Generally, there is no other entity that I can think of, private entity that I can think of, that has such a tremendous impact over the safety, the health, the safety, the economic viability of the state. And I'm not going to oversell it. I'm not going to tell you that if we had, appointed public members, it would have saved us from the problems we just experienced. But it means something to me that the commissioner has proposed this, is supporting this, and I also support it.
I've been told that DFR can appoint an overseer at any time. That board.
And
that wouldn't be helpful.
I just, on a high level, it means something to me that the commissioner thinks this is something to support. I don't buy the nose under the tent arguments. You get to vote on, people in this seat will get to vote on the ayes and the yeas. If this is seen as a slippery slope, and if members don't trust the future legislature from putting a public board member on every nonprofit board, this doesn't matter anymore. And so I'll just say again, there's nothing like Blue Cross in terms of the economic stability of our state.
So Jackson.
Yeah, I was just gonna ask, what about the argument or the point that this has been already, this system the way it is now has been okayed by the Michigan folks? Does that give you pause at all? Or?
I think it'd be really good for you to have the commissioner in to talk about the specifics of
We've
it.
actually requested
Yeah.
from the 5th floor that they send in someone. I assume that might be who they send.
Yeah.
I think exactly, Representative Senator, I think that there is a dynamic with Michigan that.
Thanks. I respect your opinion a lot. And I have various concerns with this proposal but one of the large concerns is it feels like this is something that DFR is asking for when what they really should be looking at is their own oversight and processes. They had all this information and they didn't do maybe they didn't do what they should have done in the process. So instead of looking internally and saying, what can we do to improve our process? What can we do to improve our oversight as the regulator? They, the regulator, are trying to put themselves on that board. And I just don't see I think there's a problem to be solved. And I think you're right that Blue Cross Blue Shield is different than most other nonprofit organizations. I am a little concerned about the notes under the tent, but largely I don't think that this solution is the right solution to the problem, and that really DFR should be looking internally at their own systems and what should we as the legislature be doing to improve the regulators' oversight of this organization.
And maybe in a way, I'm agreeing with you in the statement that I don't think these two board members is going to make a tremendous difference in terms of the functioning.
Exactly. I don't think it'll make a difference, and it will set a precedent. So even if it's not, the sort of concern that we're then going to be putting board members on all nonprofits that the state deals with, it will set a precedent to make it easier the next time that we're pissed off at a nonprofit organization to put a board member on it. And so I'd really like to hear, yes, from the commissioner, like, what can we do to improve the regulators' access to information, improve the regulators' access and ability to act more quickly when things get bad with an organization that they're regulating, rather than to have the regulator put people on the board.
And there's two regulators.
And there are two regulators, and so what maybe could have Green Mountain Care Board done, but DFR is the one that regulates the actual,
Right.
reserve funds and all of the things that got into the problem.
We will have them. We've just done our initial. We will have everyone in next week. We're gonna let Mike finish.
Senator, I could say more on this subject, but I think I'd be happy to talk more about it. But
Okay.
I think if I limited myself to 15 minutes, I'm never gonna make it, but
That's
I'm
fine.
gonna do my best to make it. But I wanted to mention support for the health sharing ministries section. I know that there's a great deal of public push against it. It is the most basic transparency request in my mind. And I know that there is litigation in Colorado. But I also know, I've also listened to both the commissioner and the AG's office on this question, and both have a comfort in it in this section. We operate a helpline, and people are often very confused about what they purchased. And I know that people say that it's really clear and that they don't market themselves as insurance. But then they use phrases like compliant with the Affordable Care Act, or sell levels of coverage, and maybe even the word coverage doesn't fit, that are aligned with the metal levels in the exchange. And yes, people do get confused, and yes, people do purchase these things and get it and are frustrated when it doesn't meet their healthcare needs, and then are further frustrated that they don't get a special enrollment period to come back into the exchange when you discover they haven't really bought it.
And I think the last time the report section came here, we didn't do it, and I thought it was at the request of DFR, because we didn't want them to be able to say, and reviewed, or all our information is under the purview of the Department of Financial Regulation, and further give them a further image of legitimacy. And so I think that that's the balance.
Yeah.
Is this going to work? Is this going to further give them the ability to muddy the water?
I think it would be valuable for us to know how many people are purchasing,
Okay.
participating in these plans, how much money is flowing through them. The most basic information about this activity.
Okay.
Okay, lastly, the association health plan section, and what follows is an attempt for me to muster up my indignation and give the my annual adverse selection rant.
Heard this one before.
We haven't
You've heard
had,
this one before.
we
I do it every
haven't, we
year.
haven't had it, no.
I'm ready for it. No, let's do it.
We are in trouble in the small group. The small group is collapsing. There is a great deal of evidence that we have adverse selection. That is small groups shopping between various ways of covering themselves.
Mhm.
And when you do that in the insurance market, you have a sorting of groups into healthier and less healthy groups
Yep.
going to different markets. And admittedly, this is largely happening between the small group and the self-funded group. And we have real evidence that that the groups that are going towards self-funded have lower claims, and the groups that are coming back from self-funded to the small group have higher claims. The small group is becoming a coverage of last resort or a safety net, and it is. And I am absolutely convinced it is more expensive because of our policies in this space. Policies, the state has active levers. We often lament about how little control we have over self-funded. And it's true, ERISA law preempts the state, yet we regulate stop-loss insurance. Nobody buys a self-funded claim without buying stop-loss insurance. And we have regulations to set what the attachment points are. And we are actively allowing more and more small employers to go towards the self-funded and pay less and less claims by stop-loss insurance to pay more and more of the claims. And I think the result is very predictable. It's not even an actuarial question. It's a math question. We know the pool we have, and we know what happens when you take good risk out of that pool. And we know that that's what's happening here significantly today in self-funded and very predictably in the association health plan. I understand why small employers are going to come before you and say, give us an out. I'm reading somewhere else to go. I understand. And of course they should want that because, yeah, small employers are being killed by the costs of insurance. But I got to tell you, when I hear somebody say something like, I don't want to do anything to undermine the market, but I need a place to go to get lower rates, I want to light my hair on fire. And I don't have a lot of hair. It means the very act of getting that sort of by definition, if a small employer gets lower rates, it is because, especially in a fully insured AHP, it means that they have lower claims, that they're low risk, and it means the pool that's left behind is sicker. So, the one little tiny thing, maybe it's not tiny, the one thing that frustrates me in this bill is that you have I think a good study framed up in, I think it is section 5. And you have the change that opens up AHPs in section 4. And section 4 goes into effect on January 1st of 2028. Independent of any legislative action. And yet you have a study coming to you in January of 27 that I think asks good questions. I would suggest that we should see the results of that study and deliberate on a decision about whether opening up to the association health plans makes sense after we see the outcome of that study.
I hear you and I agree with you. I think other exacerbations are the concierge doctors that are out there that seems to be growing in popularity, and also just folks who are just jumping off of insurance altogether. So I know this is not the problem we're trying to fix here, but at some point, when do we say like this system isn't working anymore and we need something radically different? And again, like I know that's not what we're doing, but we got a lot of really positive testimony on the association on that.
And of course, people are gonna like it because it's lower rates, and they should like it because it's lower rates. Their job, the small employer's job, is to think about how to offer coverage for their employees at the lowest cost they can. That's what they should be doing. Our job as people is a bit different. It's about making sure that the collective, that the pool is stable. And I guess I am left with a sort of provocative question. What is our plan for the small group? Do we have a plan for the small group? Can we afford to let it collapse? And I am very afraid that through some actions that go in the wrong directions and some we are actively undermining it. And everyone doesn't get a quote for self-funded or AHP. You know, you people want you in your pool, in their pool, if you're a good risk.
Is there an issue simply regarding choice by the limitations on the size of the number of places that small employers and individuals can go for insurance? And are there ways to broaden that outside of Vermont, whether it be through interstate compacts or other mechanisms that we haven't pursued? Because it seems to me that one of the major issues that we have about all of this is choice, and much of that choice has been limited by legislation that we passed.
So the concept, so you're right, we have made many choices to cover things that we thought was in the public interest to cover. And each and every one of those things costs something. But yet we sat at this table and said, hey, it shouldn't cost more than, what was it, $35 for an insulin prescription or the like.
But often without thought as to what that does to the rest of the market.
Well, I would just say for myself, it is always a way with full eyes wide open when we decide to cover something that costs something. And is it in the public interest to cover it, despite the concept of multi-state is brought up every time, often. And I would just say that any state that says and says, wow, that's a worse risk. It might be small. New York might look at us and say, wow, you're small and I don't have much impact. But if we're worse risk than the average, they wouldn't want us. And we would do the same thing, looking at any pool that would propose to have us if they were worse risk than us. Regular discussion about the concept of multi-state, tricky to do. Not opposed to it in concept, but it would be hard.
Are there any other multi-state compacts that you're aware of for health insurance?
I'm not aware of any state that has opened up I suppose in effect, through things like an association plan.
Exactly.
People do go multi-state, but I'd just say again, we have the pool we have the population of people we have in this state, and insurance is. This might sound like progressive politics versus, more conservative politics where, like, should people have choice versus are we in one collective? The job of insurance is sharing risk. It's what its function is. And, nobody can buy their own, I was going to use different simple, nobody can afford to pay for their own very few people can afford to pay for multi-million-dollar care. Yet it is by sharing risk, all of us paying in, that we make sure somebody who has a $1 million claim can get the care they need. And we're at risk of losing.
Right, does any other state set up a model that works?
Well, so I'll take your question and say what's hopeful. A hopeful activity is happening. It is the effort to bring down the price of care, the cost of care, and the prices that we are charged at the hospital. And so you, the Senate, has passed a bill that will limit the cost of the provider charges, the hospital charges for qualified health plans. And that should have, I don't know what else is going to do with it, but that should have a real impact on the cost of premiums. Pretty significant.
But there's not another model out there we could switch to between individual and small group.
You don't want me to talk about single.
Oh,
Which way?
okay,
Single.
we kept you over your.
I did have the thought walking in here. I spent a whole part of my career focused on, it was never single payer, taxpayer financed healthcare. Yes, a piece of that was about that we could raise the money in a simpler and more effective way. But a really big piece of it was the pool. It was about putting everyone together in one pool. And I understand choice. Everyone wants to be able to go, do the thing they want to do. And I get that. And if they could do that without harming everyone else, I'd have no problem. I'm worried about who's left behind.
Okay. Thank you. All right.
Always a good time. Thank you.
Okay, committee. That was the end of the easy part today. I don't have any witnesses scheduled. I have 9:33 miscellaneous tax. And Kirby, I just saw an email. It was an email you sent. And it looks like it has the bill with all the amendments that we asked you for yesterday.
Yes, Kirby King legislative council, there's a draft 1.2 with 5 changes from it.
Okay, come on up and tell us what you did. I think my note said we agreed yesterday, right? We had fixed the red flags.
Might be some things to argue about.
Don't encourage them. There's always something.
I can think of more feelings. Sure.
Think of the same way.
I think so. We'll see when we get there.
So sorry about that. I wasn't sure that Jen was going to be talking, so I did not connect yet to.
What was that?
What's that?
What was that?
Yeah.
So while I'm going through the connection process, I'll just give you the. We'll be talking about the clarifying language for PBR valuation on communication properties. We'll be talking about scholarship granting organizations.
Here, sure.
That was the one I was thinking of.
Oh, that was more good.
Do you want to just start
Me
at
too.
section 1 and walk us through really fast so we remember what
Oh, you want everything?
Fast walk.
Okay.
fast walk?
Oh, you did. First of all.
Well,
Okay.
Yeah.
What should I be looking at here?
Draft.
Strap 1.2.
Okay.
Did the strike also.
There it is, just said refresh. Okay, I'm with you then.
Okay,
The changes are highlighted and they're in sections 6, 19, 59, 63A and 63.
so do you want to take a quick walk through the whole bill committee or
No.
you just want to do the changes we made yesterday?
Probably the changes.
Okay with the change.
Okay, we'll go, where is the first change?
Or change in section 6.
Page.
Since
Are there comments in the,
Page
Yeah.
comments are blanked out,
Yeah.
but
we can't see the comments because it's a,
if you were expecting us to see the comments, we can't, but.
where was there a comment?
there's a
It's-
gray bar.
Yeah.
Is this PDF stripped out the comment that or otherwise?
On page.
I don't know, on page what? 29.
Looks like this.
Um,
But there's nothing over here.
It has where comments normally would be in markup.
But it's not.
It was probably a note to the editors to tell them, this isn't an accident. There's some language added that's not underlined in case they caught it. I didn't want to test them with it. I just want to let them know. We're going way in the weeds of the drafting, but there's a change that's going to happen far in the future. And there's a change that's going to happen in the short term to the same subsection. So when that happens, the future one needs to incorporate the short-term change, or else when it happens in the future, will wipe out the short-term. Does that make sense? But for the long term, it won't be underlined because by then it would already be current law.
Okay.
So that
I
there
don't
was a
have
comment
any
about
of
that.
this in my,
No, I think I
I'm looking
deleted
at the
it.
email that you sent. I don't have highlights. I have underlined.
Draft 1.2.
There's on page 8 is the first highlight,
Committee page.
line 16.
Yeah, this came in like an hour ago. Get the same version.
Page
on.
Page 8, line 16. Have it pulled up. This was the request for the clarifying provision in statute on communication property that's valued by PBRs. And the provision that's added is what Joe Remick suggested to the committee yesterday that you asked me to include. In subsection C, the provision added that says the term does not include property used solely for one-way broadcast radio or television transmission, serving the general public and owned and operated by a licensed broadcaster.
Thank you. That's good. Oh, there's the great section.
Next change is section 19, starting on page 17. I don't have it all highlighted because I wanted to really focus in on certain parts, but so you know, the Ways and Means version was entirely removed. It's replaced by the Senate Education's amendment to S-161, which was the Scholarship Granting Organizations Bill. So that you're aware, I did leave Ways and Means findings in. It is what it is. Just stating some things about the federal law. We didn't talk about that yesterday, so I just left it. But section 19 has been entirely replaced. We started with S-161, which is set up so that annually on December 1, the governor or designee may elect to provide a list of organizations that satisfy the conditions of subsection B, which we'll get into in a second, of course, to the U.S. Treasurer or Secretary of Treasury for purposes of making the qualified or federal qualified elementary and secondary education scholarship tax credit available for taxpayers under 26 U.S.C. section 25F. It shall be presumed that an organization listed in the previous year will be listed in the subsequent year unless the governor finds the organization has failed to meet the requirements of the section. And then subsection B has some Vermont specific requirements for SGOs that are in addition to the federal requirements. So it starts with number 1, it qualifies as a scholarship granting organization as defined under federal law. So basically it starts with meets all the requirements of the federal law. 2 is a nonprofit organization with the core mission of providing educational opportunities to economically underprivileged students through after-school programs, summer programs, tutoring, and similar programs. 3, all grants and scholarships provided by the organization are to students attending a public school or an independent school that's capable of receiving public tuition. That is the Senate Ed version. For your consideration, based on your discussion yesterday, there's some additional ones here. One new requirement that states all grants and scholarships provided by the organization are for students to attend a program that is partnered with or approved by a public school or independent school capable of receiving tuition. The purpose of this provision would be to have some way of monitoring the programs themselves. And then the next one is when determining whether to award a scholarship, the organization does not discriminate against any student because of, and then this is all taken from the employment law about discrimination in employment context. So a scholarship recipient can't be discriminated against the same way that a person applying for a job can't be discriminated against. So those are for B, for the new requirements that the governor's office would screen for.
That's a question, as to whether or not it would be possible, feasible, or desirable to modify the, I guess it's section 5 that you're using as the check back, is it right? As to whether or not it's actually been donated to an organization, as to say it's not just an organization that's capable of doing what FOR does, but to simply say will, in effect, promise to treat anything received from Vermont so as to put the limitations in. In other words, you might have a larger organization that might donate to private schools that don't meet Vermont's criteria, but would agree to donate to those private schools that do meet only our criteria and certify to that fact. Or present evidence that allows us to audit it to that fact.
So trying to follow it. So luckily for administration in this case, the federal law set up in a way to simplify it. Under the federal law, all donations to a Vermont SGO have to be spent on Vermont scholarships. So you don't have a scenario, if that's what I'm hearing from you, where one organization might be working with the states. Yeah, that wouldn't happen because of the federal
The
law.
federal law restricts that.
So the organizations specific to this Vermont law would be the SGOs that are recognized in Vermont and have to provide scholarships within Vermont only.
Okay.
Could
such an organization be a subsidiary of another?
Possibly, but the one receiving the donations and providing scholarships in Vermont would have to be a 501c3 in the federal law. By itself would have to organize its funds in a way that follow federal law, and for that particular 501c3, even though it might have some shared ownership, that particular entity though would have to only give scholarships to Vermont students.
What I'm actually getting at is whether or not there's an opportunity for larger organizations, more diverse scholarship granting organizations to qualify under Vermont law, provided they limit what they do using Vermont donated funds to funds that meet Vermont's law.
I think this does that.
Randy,
Taken together with the federal law, I think it
would the
does.
YMCA fit that? They're a national organization. But I think the Vermont affiliate individual chart, I may be wrong, but I mean, that's Boys and Girls Clubs are a big organization. But they have organizations within Vermont. They might be doing something in California that didn't meet our definitions, but I don't think we want to preclude them.
Well, exactly. What I'm saying is, how can we make sure that we have a wider field that still complies in terms of the funds actually donated with Vermont law?
Yeah, I think under this language, the for an organization to be recognized and therefore be eligible to receive donations for Vermont scholarships and for those donors to be eligible for the federal tax credit, it all have to be contained within Vermont, which means that they would all have to follow these state laws that you're adding to it.
But a subsidiary or an organization affiliated with one of the organizations, such as the Boys Club, and so on and so forth, that has a wider audience, is not restricted from participating,
No.
and Vermont residents from participating.
That's right. If there's some related nonprofit that's doing something else, they can do whatever they want. It's just that they can't take these funds and do it. That would be.
All they can do is what's listed in here.
No, I just want to make sure that there's no restriction that prevents an organization that has those kinds of connections
Got it.
from being one to consider.
There isn't a restriction. There's been talk of, VSAC being part of this. And thinking through how the federal law applies, VSAC as it stands now would not qualify, but VSAC could theoretically create a brand new 501c3 just for the purpose. And it would follow the federal law and Vermont law with the donations it receives.
Okay.
Kirby, go up to number 2, just to so a nonprofit organization, would that include a municipal program like a town rec department or something like that?
That phrase is actually a bit redundant because the federal law requires it being a 501c3.
Oh, it does?
Yeah, so that
Okay.
nonprofit might be broader in that language there, but at the end of the day, it's not gonna be broader.
So
it has to be a 501c3.
The town recreation department under the auspices of the municipal government would not be eligible, not a 501c3.
By themselves, no, but they could create one feasibly.
They
Okay.
would not be eligible to be an SGO, but they could
Right.
be eligible to receive a scholarship, to have a kid use a scholarship. to
An SGO would give them the scholarship to the town.
Correct.
But you gotta pay.
Okay.
Yes,
Okay,
there are layers here that I think
Yeah.
our
I know.
people are not quite understanding all the time.
Right.
Yeah.
There's some 2 layers. Yeah, I was definitely probing your question as them acting as an SGO, not
Okay,
not
so they can't be an
providing.
SGO. Okay,
You're talking about providing programming basically, and which means that, yeah. In that case, it flows SGO scholarship to student enrolls in program.
Yeah.
okay. Thank you.
Moving on.
Okay, so that's 4 and 5. And then subsection C would be new reporting requirements, that were discussed yesterday. I came up with, some for your review here. So annually audit report January 15, each scholarship granting organization pursuant to subsection A of the section in the previous calendar year shall provide a report to the legislative education committees, providing the following information relating to activity in the previous year. The total amount provided in scholarships under this section. 2, the total number of scholarships provided under this section. 3, the total number of scholarship recipients. 4, a complete list of after-school programs, summer programs, tutoring, similar programs that scholarship recipients attended using scholarship funds provided by the organization, and the amount of scholarship funds received by each program. There's not a lot of ability to regulate programs, so this is one of the few pieces in here that does try to get some information on the programs themselves. Sub 5, the total number of individuals who made donations to the organization, including the zip code of each individual donor. 6, the total amount of money received as donations. 7, the total amount spent on administrative costs with a description of those administrative costs and accounting of any unspent funds currently held. And last, a list identifying all employees, officers, and board members of the organization that includes for every individual the names of the position held and the compensation received.
Pretty comprehensive.
That's
Great job, Kirby.
I true brainstormed today a little bit the experience.
Nonprofit, so.
That's deeper than a 990.
Okay, we gotta keep moving.
Okay.
You know what 990 is?
You don't?
So I know what I 90 is.
You should.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Before you start your SPO.
Let's try.
Move the Attorney General section.
Yeah.
Okay, so sub E is the last addition you hear. Actually, I shouldn't skip over because I should remind you of the parts that were from S-161 as well. So sub D this is from 161. In the governor's discretion, the governor may audit organizations seeking placement on the list or a program receiving scholarship funds under this section to ensure the organization meets all the requirements for placement as provided by this section and applicable federal law. So this is auditing support for the governor's office. One thing I did add, which should be highlighted, is I added this part about the ability to also audit the programs receiving funds. If you're concerned about not everything being above board, I think the weakness in the process is not going to be with the SGOs. There's a lot for them to follow. It's pretty tight. It would be with the programs.
Yeah.
So this is another thing added to say that the governor's office could look, or, you know, the executive branch could look at the programs receiving scholarships funds, as well. Subsection E, one, if the attorney general, there had to be, before I read it, just kind of set the stage here. When there's a court order, the court order speaks for itself. But when there's a change in federal law or a change in federal regulations, there needs to be someone deciding that this regulation invalidates this state law, right? It might not have gone to court. So someone has to make that call. For our state, the attorney general is in the best positions. That's why the attorney general's office is being brought into this. So it says, if the attorney general finds that any provision of this act is rendered invalid due to a federal act, federal agency rule, or court of competent jurisdiction, the attorney general shall submit written notice of the invalidation to the governor, the speaker of the House, and the president pro tem of the Senate, that the provision is invalid. Second, upon receipt of the notice provided under this, or subdivision 1 of this subsection E, neither the governor nor the governor's designee shall provide a list of organizations to the U.S. Secretary of the Treasury under subsection A of the section until the General Assembly has enacted legislation addressing the invalidation. So that is the part where Vermont won't participate if federal regulations come out invalidating any of these further restrictions that you've placed in the statute here. A lot less work, especially.
Sorry to disappoint.
I know. I lost a lot of money to pad a lot on that.
If you want.
Would you? Yeah. Section 59. This is you asked for the increase for the downtown village center tax credit. The House had set this at 4 million. This changes it to 3.5.
And I was told the 3,500 is what has been approved in the budget. The 35, yeah.
3.5.
3,500,000. The 500,000 increase rather than million.
That brings us to the language that was drafted by John Gray relating to the Burlington waterfront tip.
And tell us what page you're on.
That's 63A on page 63. I was not planning to read all of his findings, but the short version is John prepared a comprehensive list of all of the changes, all the legislative changes recommending to TIP. Just restating what has happened up until now. And then concluding with restating the current state of things, which is on page
I'm sorry.
66. It's on page 66, subsection B, where I've highlighted there that the increment would be 75% of the state education tax increment and 100% of the municipal tax increment, and it's the intent of the General Assembly to clarify that the city of Burlington may retain until June 30, 2035. Those amounts.
Did you want to take more testimony on this?
For those.
Can we please go over the scan? Can we get the auditor's office and the sticky pagination?
Did you discuss how this one witness had it on their slide? Don't know why I'm here.
That was on there?
That's like their second slide. Is it? Why I'm here?
I,
So anyway, John has put down the parcels to be very specific. He's also included a subsection C that says this section shall not be construed to modify the tax names and the retention percentages of the Burlington waterfront district. As in, this is meant to be a restatement of the current state of things. It's not meant to change anything. And he also included a 63B.
do you have any chocolates on this?
It says on or before November 15, 2029, the city of Burlington shall submit an updated tax increment financing plan for the Burlington Waterfront Tax Increment Financing District to BEPC, The plan shall include adjustments and updates of appropriate data and information sufficient for the council to determine, based on tax increment financing debt actually incurred and the history of increment generated, whether the municipal tax increment and state education tax increment percentages should be continued or adjusted to a lower percentage to be retained for the remaining duration of the retention period, and shall provide sufficient municipal and state education tax increment to service the remaining debt.
Okay, so that's what we, yep.
Yeah, that's great. Well, so this has been extended a few times, the retention period. Is that my understanding from all of the different testimonies to 2035? Will this ever be done? Because it's kind of almost doubling a time of it. Yeah.
As long as we keep extending,
Well,
that was the last extension. I believe it's had like 3 extensions,
Yes.
and so it will take legislative action for it to be extended again. John is here.
But Chris
Because
is
the tip
supposed to end
In 35.
Yeah.
Yes,
This tip is 20 years, right?
generally, yes,
And this will be
because it's based on
39.
it's based on a 20-year.
You're still.
No.
Sure.
Yeah. So this should be ending at the end of 25, but
35.
35. So, yeah, because we extended it to 15. So.
Okay.
This city said they think they're gonna have some money left over, especially if I think it's section 2. One of the sections that hasn't been developed yet, they're pretty confident will be redeveloped, and if that comes in.
Yeah.
They should have the money.
That's the Church Street facing.
Yeah.
where the mall was. Yeah.
And then they will have more money than they need to cover the bond. And so they're quite willing to come in and renegotiate percentage and give more to the ed fund.
Thank you, John, for all of that
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you, John.
research
The auditor
and
for.
useless drafting.
Yes.
Okay,
Okay.
let's move it along. It's Friday. I thought you wanted to go home.
Yeah,
Kirby was brilliant.
We are.
I read real good.
All right,
Red.
that's
good.
it.
So that brings, I want to flag effective dates things, so you're aware of that. Section 6. Those changes with the clarifying language, since the penalties were pushed back and I amended the section that involved with the penalties, it means that clarifying language is not actually going to be law until April 1, 2027. I don't think that's legally significant, but if you didn't want that sooner, I would have to just draft a new section to deal with that. Section 19, the SGO change is going to be effective on passage. Section 59.
Okay, and this you drafted as our amendments, right?
This is all a strike amendment for
It is a strike.
finance,
That's what I
creation and
wanted to
33. This is effective on passage as well. They did the change to the tax credit. And the TIF clarifying language is also effective on passage. That's all.
So would you like a motion, Madam Chair?
Yeah, motion.
Okay, this is 9:33. I'm just looking at this and making sure that this does contain all the housekeeping from the tax department. We've got our PBR that went in. This has the section on the licenses for department?
That, those sections, I heard from Mike O'Grady yesterday
Yeah.
that you told him that you don't want to make any changes from the House version.
I think we felt comfortable after we talked to him.
Okay.
Okay, and it has all coupling, decoupling language in it.
Yep.
All right,
And with the adjustments we went through yesterday. that
Yes.
was-
Yeah, your change in that really scary paragraph.
Uh-huh. I haven't changed anything from what we went through yesterday, so everything's still in there.
Okay. Committee. Are we ready?
I would make a motion to approve draft 1.2 of H 933.
Okay. Senator Hardy has moved that we approve draft 1.2 of H 933. Is there any further discussion?
It will be a clean draft, right? You probably, it will still be 1.2 once you clean up the.
I just removed the highlights. It's been edited,
Okay.
recently, so I'll just send it to Charlotte clean right now.
Okay. Further discussion? Are there any amendments? If not, on this one, I'm gonna have the clerk call the roll.
Senator Chittenden,
Yep.
Senator Beck,
Yes.
Senator Hardy,
Yes.
Senator Brock,
Painful, yes.
Senator Gulick,
Yes.
Senator Mattos, yes, Senator Cummings.
Yes. 700. I
Yay,
will
team.
report that one. Thank you, team. It was painful.
You're taking,
I'll report it. Yeah.
Someone's still.
And we will continue.
Sorry.
Okay. One down. One more to go. Which is 749, the yield bill. And 940. The technical changes to education, finance. That's, John, that's you.
That sure is.
Okay.
I sent to Charlotte. I told all of you that I was working on an amendment.
Okay.
And I sent it to Charlotte. I think, is it posted Charlotte now? Or actually, technically, it came from Pat.
Yeah, it's under his name then.
Oh,
Okay.
sorry. Either way, sorry, Pat. I didn't mean
It says Hardy proposal. on the
Yes,
website.
yes.
Okay.
Got my name on the actual document, but this was, do you want me to go through it or do you want John to?
Why
How do you-
don't you tell us what you're trying to do and
Okay.
then we can
Okay.
go through the numbers.
or Julia, because I've
Or
got Ed
Julia,
Fund Outlook
okay.
information as well. There's both the draft and the Ed Fund Outlook are posted. And this was, my plea to try to find something that we could get a 7-0 vote on the yield bill, is like we just did on the miscast bill. And so it does a few things. I heard that there was interest in including S-220 in the bill, which was the earlier bill that was passed about it, the spending thresholds.
Yeah,
So this includes S-220, except for at the 115% instead of 118, or instead of 112, which is what 220 had. And so trying to find a compromise on
okay, so it is 220 and 220 that's been,
altered a little bit
Altered.
by making it 115 instead of 112. And I did talk to a number of you about that. And then it also includes a proposal to increase the renter's credit or renter rebate, depending on what you call it, in order to, what we're using is buying down the property tax rate, but that doesn't help renters. And rents have increased significantly over the last few years. And as I shared with you, I'd heard from constituents who are renters that the renter credit is pretty minimal compared to renter credits in other states where the rent is actually lower. So we have high rents and small renter credit. So this was an attempt to increase the renter credit. The renter credit, which technically is not, we've discovered throughout this, Pat helped peel back a lot of onion layers on this. The renter credit is actually a renter rebate. But it includes a whole bunch of different way of calculations. It determines the people who are eligible based on their income, and it's based on HUD categories of income of extremely low income, very low income, and low income, which are essentially 30, 50, and 80% of area median income. So this would take it up to the low income, so up to 80% of the median. Right now it's at 65% of the median income, area median income. So, and I think that the 80% is around 62,000 for, and I can pull up the chart, but it takes it up to the 80% of median income. It also increases the percentage of the rent that is allowed to be given as a credit. Right now it's 10% of your annual rent. And the rent is based on average rents, I believe, for an area, or a HUD defined rent. So it's not your actual rent, it's a HUD defined rent. Right now, the credit is based on 10% with a maximum credit of $2,500. This would increase it to 15% with a maximum credit of $3,250. And this is particularly important for the high rent areas of our state, namely Chittenden County. Right now, lots of people in Chittenden County don't qualify because their rent is higher, or they don't get their rent back, their credit that's too low. So those are the three components of the renter credit or renter rebate. And the estimate for doing that would increase the renter rebate by 11.5 million. And that would take that off the 105 million that would be put to the bottom line to buy down. So it would be, and I cannot quite see this because it's printed so tiny, but it would be about $94 million that would go for the buy down, and then 11 would go for the renter credit. So that would mean that, not just homeowners or property taxpayers, but also renters would get some of the benefit of the buy down. And there is an education fund outlook that Julia can probably go over without. There's a column that would include this. And so it would use the full 105, it would just slice off 11 of it for renters, and the rest of it would go for property tax buy down. The way this is drafted is that this would be permanent, but I'm certainly open to making it 1 year because the property tax buy down is 1 year. So this
makes it permanent, your amendment?
The amendment is drafted as permanent because I heard pushback on making it a one-time thing yesterday, but I'm open to making it one time if that is helpful. I just want to make sure that if we're buying down property tax rates, that renters also get some of the benefit of that buy down. So it'd be about 10% of the money would go to
Generally,
renters.
hear from the tax department.
I know that, Pat has been in touch with the tax department about all of this, and they helped him and me to understand it all. But yeah,
Because we have a problem with uptake on this credit.
I think a lot of it is because it's really low and people's, the income level is quite low for the eligibility, and the amount is
uptake
quite low.
was people that are eligible, not applying. we're not getting.
People just don't know about it, so they don't apply for it.
We don't know why they don't apply for it. Pat, did you wanna come up? Did you get the information or should we send an emergency email over to the tax?
Can I ask a question in the meantime, which is that, is it permanent contingent on a buy down or is it just permanent period?
It is, the way it is permanent, but we could make it permanent contingent on a buy down, but that's a little complicated to have that. So it's just drafted as permanent, but we can make it one time contingent in a way. I asked John to think about how to do that just in case that came up.
Floor is yours.
So Patrick Kirkman joined fiscal office. I guess I'm not sure if you want me to talk about sort of the mechanics of this proposal, specifically how the credit's calculated. Or since there's
We
some other
haven't done
information.
this for a while, so it might be helpful to do a quick walkthrough as to how it's calculated.
Sure.
And then, yeah, how do people get it?
Sure. So I guess I'll start with how do people get it. The most common time that people will apply and get this credit is when they're filing their taxes. Some of that is, so it's not really within the personal income tax schedule. It's just people are already filing with the tax department, so it's a very convenient time for them to also do this. And actually, anyone who uses TurboTax will find that at some point when you're going through filling out your return, it will prompt you if you're a Vermont resident asking you if you're a renter. So they help sort of facilitate that for a lot of filers, even though that's sort of separate from their personal income tax return. The second piece being how it's calculated. So so currently it is everyone who is determined to be extremely low income and below, that's 30% of AMI or less, they can receive the full credit amount, and then that phases out between the 30th percentile and the 65th of area median income. The increase from 50 to so very low use is 50th percentile, or like 50% of area median income. In 2000, for effective for 2024, that was actually changed. And I think it was at 144 maybe, to move that from 50 to 60. But so that's your phase out range, right? So that determines your eligibility. Obviously, you have to be renting to be eligible. But then, so there's an initial sort of first cap in terms of what you can receive. So HUD produces benchmarks on a county basis all across the US for all their programs that they have. So based on the benchmarked market value rent in your area for either, I believe it can go based on your family configuration up to 4 bedrooms for this particular program in the calculation. So that is your initial cap. In Vermont, every county, with the exception of Chittenden County, does not.
Chittenden County too, they always looks at me around.
Must be the name.
No, let's have a county named after.
This is true. It means royalty people.
So based on HUD's benchmarked value for the appropriate size apartment that your family size would need, you can receive 10% of that as a cash refund. So that's the initial cap. There's the secondary cap currently under law. It's $2,500. Now there's only one. So you have the initial cap based on your county, but there's a secondary cap of $2,500 in the current law, where if the benchmarked rent in your county is above it, then you're capped at that point. So Chittenden County is the only county that has benchmarked rental values that actually get up to that point. And that starts at the 2 bedroom through 4-bedroom, I think. So that's sort of the secondary cap. In terms of what you can receive as part of this rebate. So when you're looking at the proposed language, if you were to just increase the amount you can get back from 10 to 15%, right? So 15% of the benchmark value in your county, then pretty much every county would be running right up against that 2,500 cap and I believe in Chittenden County, it would be for all 4 different bedroom configurations.
Yes, that sounds right.
So that's sort of the impetus for at the same time also increasing that $2,500 cap to $3,250. Still, a few more counties at the 4-bedroom size would still be up against that 3,200 cap, 3,250 cap. But again, Chittenden County would be the only one that is sort of down at the 2-bedroom apartment size that's running up against that sort of secondary cap.
And can I interrupt for just 1 second, Pat? So the 3,250, the reason I came up with that number is I think the last time we changed that number was in 2020. We changed it to 2,500, I think. Be wrong about that. That's what it looked like. And since then, rents have increased by about 30%. It seems like, based on my quick assessment. So that's a 30% increase. That's how it got to the 32. It wasn't random. I try to have like data behind the things I do.
Okay.
So again, just to talk about why you sort of way to think about those two things working in tandem. If you were to just increase the 2,500 cap to 3,250 cap, the only county that would end up really benefiting from this proposal would be Chittenden County, for individuals that are in those bedroom size apartments that are already up against the cap. If you were to only increase the percent from 10% to 15% of what you pay in rent or the benchmark amount annually, then everyone but some people in Chittenden County would benefit. So that's how the two are sort of working together to both, basically cast a wide net. And so then there's the third provision, which is in here, which is that phase out range is being extended from the 30% of the AMI to 65% of the AMI to 30% to 80%. So you're adding 30 or 15% more of AMI in your calculation.
Yeah, and that only seems fair given the fact that the property tax credit actually goes up to a higher income level. And so this is making it a broader range, just like the property tax credit. So trying to put renters on a similar range, still lower than the property tax credit in terms of income, but trying to increase the number of renters that qualify for this. And maybe the uptake would be greater if there are a broader range of renters who are eligible for it.
Second.
What's the current appropriation for the rented credit?
There's in the budget across the hall right now, there's $11.5 million. And I promise that's not a coincidence with what the estimated number was. Or it is a coincidence, sorry. Yeah, 11.
This is in the budget.
Yeah, so one thing that I think might trip me up initially was when I think about credit, I usually think of it in the personal income tax space, which you don't need to appropriate funds for it because it's a tax expenditure and it's more money you're opting not to collect. What's different about this is that it's sort of outside personal income tax. It is outside, even though you can collect it when filing those. But the department's actually cutting checks to people when they file to receive this, so that they actually do require an appropriation in order to be able to cut those checks each year.
Yeah.
And that's why there's a natural appropriation. And so one thing I would note is, so the policy language that you have in front of you doesn't do any of that appropriating work with the context of the buy down money being used to do so. Functionally, if this is to go through, what you would end up needing to do is when you get the budget, you would add language to it. Required appropriating language to both square with what Julia has in the outlook for the adjusted buy down amount and to square with needing to put a little more money into the appropriation to fund this program.
Okay. To find a little more money,
11.5.
11.5. So if we do this, the budget's coming in 11.5 short.
No, we
No.
take the money off the buy down from the property taxes. We take 11.5 off, we shave it off that,
And
So
put it on the budget.
put it on the budget.
Okay,
what's the
we
total
need
amount
to hear
for
from Julia as to the impact that will
Pardon me?
have.
What's the total amount?
It's like,
11.5.
No,
Well,
so
the-
the overall buy down.
Oh, the overall buy down would be,
104.5 plus.
it is,
The total general fund,
yeah, I can't,
so Julie Richter, JFO, the budget construct currently has 104.9 million.
Okay.
Of one-time general fund being transferred to the ed fund, so that's the number that you've been working with, but as Pat just mentioned. Because it's a general fund appropriation, it doesn't make sense to transfer all of the 104.9 million to the ed fund to then appropriate back to the renter credit when there's already a general fund, like, it doesn't make sense. So what does make sense is what Pat just said as to when you get the budget.
Yeah.
Instead of having the 104.9 being transferred to the ed fund for the buy down, it would be 104.9 minus Pat's estimate of 11.5. And then the remainder would be used for the buy down.
so it's 93, you said 93.9 on here, but I think it's
It's-
93.
Yeah, so originally when I did the modeling for the ed fund, and I can talk about the ed fund outlook. Originally, when I did the modeling for the ed fund outlook, my understanding was that the estimate was 11 million for this expansion rather than 11.5 million, which is why in the ed fund outlook, you see the 93.9 million being used for the buy down rather than 93.4 million. However, if you go all the way down to the bottom of the outlook, if you're looking at it, there's 0.68 million unreserved, unallocated on the bottom line, so it can just naturally fit into the cost of 11.5 million. So everything still works. It's just,
Yeah.
you'd have 0.5 less on the bottom line.
What's the impact on the tax rates if we're going with I think 100% buy down, right?
Yeah, so that will be, do you want to make sure my screen?
Be the last
Yeah.
one.
That will be.
Can I ask a quick question while Julie's getting her screen up? To the chair's earlier question, what is the uptake on the credit? And is this assuming that like everyone who's able to get the credit takes the credit?
This is assuming a similar take-up rate to what we have now. Yes. So the underlying data that was used was actuals from the past. It's my computer lets me log back in. I can tell you exactly what it was.
But you said the participation rate for the rental unit buy down was lower than what you typically would expect. So
I'm not.
It
I
was
don't- I don't
was
answer
going
that.
up, then given at the tax department in for a year, maybe. But they were pleased with the reaction they were getting. Despite last year,
So just to quickly answer Senator Gluck's question, so in 2024, this is when the phase out still ended at 50% of the AMI. It was about 12,000 claimants each year. With that expansion of the phase out to 65%, in the last 2 years, it's been about 15,500 to 16,500 claimants. So definitely with the income expansion, you see right there the additional people being pulled in.
Yeah, and this would go up even from 65 to 80, so we would probably get a few more thousand plus, a much higher uptake on it.
So if this wasn't, I think I heard you say originally, Senator Hardy, if we put some qualified contingent language for years out
Yeah.
on this, from what you know about this, does that pose a great deal of problems for if we do increase this year, but then next year it has to fall back because we just don't know if we can commit to it?
I don't know. I mean, it's a sort of, if it's a one-time thing, then some people will get it next year and not get the following year, which is kind of what we're doing with the property tax buy down. We're giving a one-time buy down. So I've tried to make it as equivalent as possible to say, like, if we're gonna do this for homeowners, let's do it for renters too. And it's a one-time thing. I would love for it to be permanent, and we could put it in as permanent, and then it just becomes part of the budget conversation next year. I mean, we're trying to promote affordable housing in our state, and renting is part of it. And renters tend to be younger because they, are just haven't bought a house yet or whatever, don't have enough money, and they tend to be lower income. And so I think this is an important part of the population to be able to support in their housing. And if we're gonna,
But next year, we are not going to have 100 million, or in this case, what are we down to, 88 million to buy down rates, and you've got a lot of elderly people living on fixed incomes. So, yeah, I mean, we're only kicking the can in one instance down the road from one.
Following up on that point really quick, this is gonna go to ropes next, is that correct? The yield bill will go there,
So
so
be trading bills, they'll be sending you the budget, you'll be sending them.
so they can also weigh in on that question if they have.
Yeah.
Discussion.
Have
Do
we
we
heard
want to
any,
walk us through?
I think Senator Brown, okay.
have you heard any argument in any of the discussions regarding, this renter issue, contrary to extending it, fully or partly to rental houses?
Have I?
Has anybody, has anybody,
Well,
we heard the opposition, that's what I asked.
I haven't, but I mean, the reason I brought this up is because I heard from constituents, I think I mentioned that, who were like, oh, the renter credit's kind of low in Vermont. And so I haven't talked broadly about it. I've talked to our staff about it to help me get it drafted, and to all of you about it to try to, make the argument that we're gonna be giving property tax relief, let's give renter relief too.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like a fair way of doing things. I just wanted to know, has anybody come to us and said, don't do it for reasons A, B, and C we haven't heard or thought of?
I haven't heard any, and it's a current program, so tax department already knows how to administer it.
Yeah.
So.
I mean, one of the problems with doing it now is we haven't had a chance to hear from the tax department or any of the housing advocates. I'm sure the housing
That's
advocates would
correct.
love it.
And rental advocates may not, but I'm wondering, are there any cogent reasons that we
Well,
have
why
not
would
heard?
the rental advocates not like it? It makes rental housing.
Yeah, well, they would,
Yeah.
but somebody is going to object to it in all probability, and the question is who and why. That's all I'm asking.
I think what we did is we made it
Yeah.
so
Yeah, it's just.
the landlord doesn't have to get involved. It's involving landlord certificate.
Well, you still have to do those.
Yeah, they have to do something, but
It's
they,
thinking like, oh, yeah.
getting the landlord who signs your certificate, they have to file rents, right? No.
Well, we made a change in the legislature 2-3 years ago, where you used to have to hand deliver and also have more information on
Yeah.
it. And now it's more or less just who lived in your units, and if their rent was subsidized, then you just file that with the tax department, and you don't have to go around and hand physical.
Things and finding people, and we made it simpler. The outtake was good. I think the last discussion we had was whether or not the rent could be shared with the housing people who were trying to just keep track of average rents.
Well, my,
But this is not connected to that. I don't remember where we get it down.
and my thought always with it is that as part of the landlord certificate, you don't have to say if they're current with their rent. So you could have somebody that's behind a few months that then gets a renter credit that the landlord never sees a benefit of.
Okay. Julia, talk to us about that, what this will do.
Okay. Director Jim, sharing my screen. I believe this Advent Outlook is under Pat's name. Yeah. So perhaps Pat wants to walk through it. Go.
Yes, please.
So columns A through D are the same as what you saw yesterday. So I'm just gonna scroll in a little bit. I tried to take out some columns that it didn't seem the committee was actively contemplating. So column B is what passed the House. Column C is that half buy down. D is the full buy down. Both of those using the 104.9 million. And then column E is the proposal from Senator Hardy for the amendment. So we spoke about this. This would be using, I said here 93.9 million, really would be 93.34 million, because the estimate is 11.5 million. But anyways, that won't have an impact.
It won't change yields or
No, because we have
the 6.8.
0.68 reserved on the bottom line, so we have that flex. So anyways, using that changed buy down of decreasing the 104.9 to cover the renter credit and solving for a uniform average bill change and applying all of that 93.4 million in 1 year would result in an average property tax bill increase of 4.3% compared to the prior year. And so you can essentially see if you're comparing that against the full buy down, it increases from 3.6 to 4.3%.
Yeah, that's what, and we went to 100%, which is where I think we were going yesterday. We were looking at a 3.6% buy down,
So 0.7%.
0.7. But the tax rate would be 3.6, and if we go up to 4.3, right?
The average tax bill change, yes.
Right.
More than that, I also think it's a fair approach. Because property tax relief is only helping property tax owners, and that gets translated onto renters who don't necessarily see the rent go down. So I really respect this approach, and I think it is really worth including in this bill because renters need relief. And if that had been adjusted since 2020, it seems like a small amount. Which again equalizes the benefits. So it's not just the property owners needing the landlords. This is also going to help the renters who the landlords are getting benefited from. So I think it's a fair.
It's just increased rents to make up the increase in the tax bill. So you might not see,
But they're getting a discount. And so now this discount is also helping renters too.
which they may not get a discount if their rent goes up.
But I mean, the property tax thing.
Because if your property tax goes up, and then you pass that along to the renter, to cover your costs of owning the property. And you get $100 more renter credit, but your rent goes up $25 a month. For whatever reason, part of, utilities included, cost of your property taxes and your rent goes up $25 a month. You're gonna have what's 25 times 12?
It's just gonna go up anyway.
275.
Oil's going up.
You're actually gonna have.
Well, by the end of property owners, nothing gets to the renters at all. They're still paying the same rents. So this is a way to just have them get also a little bit of relief that we're giving with the 110 million, but now just equalizing it.
As a landlord, you look at what your expenses are. And if you need to increase rent, and if your property taxes go away, to cover that increase. And you have to increase everyone's rent in the building or whatever it is, $25, $50 a month.
Which they've been doing for the last 6 years, but the renters haven't gotten any additional.
I would respectfully disagree that every landlord in the state of Vermont has increased their rent. Some of them, yes. And I'm just saying that renters may not see a benefit if the full
Right.
104 is the rent.
Well, we'll
You can't,
yeah.
because if your rent goes up $300 a year in total and your credit goes up $200, you're actually still 100 versus if your rent goes up $100, but your credit doesn't go up, it's still 100. So it doesn't make
But there's
a difference one way or another.
there's this still puts most of the $105 million toward
Yeah.
property tax relief. And And so property owners are gonna have a lower tax because of this. And this is just, and rents could go up for a whole number of reasons. And if we don't increase the renter credit, they're gonna go up and they're not gonna have a bigger credit. So, you know, it still isn't fair to renters. This is basically just saying like, look, if we have $100+ million to put toward property tax relief, we should at least put some of it toward renter relief so that everybody gets a fair share of it. And there's still a lot of property tax buy down in here.
Okay, I think you can say that individual renter credits or individual rent increases are going to be as varied as there are landlords and tenants.
I think you agree with that.
Whether or not there's fuel, whether at it. And, you know, there's no perfect solution. It won't be a one-on-one transfer. I'm trying to see where the committee, do we have draft language for this?
There's a draft.
Okay, that's John.
It's under Pat's name, but it's called the Senate. It's Hardy proposal.
The Hardy amendment, okay.
Yeah, and John drafted it.
John drafted it, it's the Hardy proposal and it's under Patrick's name.
Yeah, it's a group effort here.
Okay, thank you all for working late last night. Even if your name's not on it. Okay, so we have a draft, we have the, we have the language, we have the numbers. We trying to see who's at my door, you're being called.
Yeah, but if you're trying to do something, I'm here.
Okay, I'm looking for a sense, are there any further questions on this? Go back.
I can do a couple million of additional rent relief, not nothing. And I'm not interested in negotiating against ourselves on the excess benefit.
So that's enough.
This is the bill I ended up.
Okay,
So I'm gonna say I'm supportive of the renter's credit. I'm not necessarily supportive of the 115. I was been thinking that could be a separate discussion. So I do really like the renter's credit. With the 115% excess spending threshold is where I thought additional discussion is gonna be had.
that's right, we haven't even had that discussion. Where you were proposing to put 220, but it's not 220, it's an altered 220.
Yeah.
Should I just ask one
Okay,
question to Ruth?
Yes.
so with present state, I've got 2 no's.
Well, I'm a yes on the renter's credit.
Okay, so
I like the renter's credit, 11 million.
I put just to be transparent with you, I put the 115 in here because of our conversation yesterday where you said that you would be supportive of
I
that.
said
So,
to float it and discuss it.
so it's in here because of that conversation, but we can keep talking about it. But
okay,
I
so
think
it's
Matt
2
has a
way.
question.
What's that?
I think I just heard it both ways. Is the renter credit as proposed in here ongoing?
The way it's drafted now, it is ongoing.
Okay, so it's not a
because
one-
It was easier to draft that way
Okay.
or whatever, but if it needs to be 1 year to get people to be supportive, I would be okay with that, just to. Because the buy down is 1 year. But
See, this is 95 million of property tax owner relief, and this would be 11 million for renter relief. Okay. Oh.
I think, all right.
yeah.
Is anyone interested in my opinion? Because I haven't spoken.
I would love to hear.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that.
Good.
I am in favor of the renter credit, the higher renter credit. And I'm also in favor of lowering the threshold, but I'm also willing to go back to 118 if that is something that we want to negotiate.
118 or 140?
No, 118 for the excess spending threshold?
Yeah.
Oh, I don't think we're going that.
Okay.
Good try, though.
We had a bill passed out of this committee.
112.
220. Soft cap, it's ways out of it, and I would say. There were 5 in this committee, and there were probably 25 votes on the floor.
What was it? 112?
112.
Yeah, okay. I'm fine with that. I'm fine with leaving that and we can negotiate it today, the 112 cap, that's fine.
Or we could just let it go and hope the House passes it.
Yeah, I mean, I put 220 in here because that I heard
Yeah.
that people wanted it. I was trying, I mean, like,
Yeah,
I'm trying
no,
to find a
it's, you know,
negotiation, like something that we can all.
But you didn't put 220 in here.
I literally, Thomas and I had or Senator Chittenden and I had a conversation yesterday.
Yeah.
And that's why I put it in here as
And I
115.
literally
So-
said
It's not
floating around.
Exactly.
It's
So I'm
not- it's not
floating around.
220.
Okay.
But at 112, it would be. Would you agree to that? If it was at
Okay, if
112.
we go back to the 112 and do 220 as we
As
passed it,
passed to the Senate.
okay, that works.
Sure.
All right.
If that will get Senator Beck's vote, I'm absolutely happy to do that.
I think we may get more than Senator Beck.
I'm not okay with 11 mil. I think that's too much.
I'm not under the impression to effectively double the program. I fully understand the help and the support. I don't have tenants knocking at my door to increase it, but I know there is definitely pockets where people probably are knocking on doors. But effectively doubling the program is a high step for me.
I just see it as some relief. I mean, it's been 6 years since the renters have gotten any adjustment relief. What if we just make the 1 year and then hopefully next year, if there's more money, then you can maybe extend it, but 1 year of relief for renters? Just to spread it around to not just the property taxpayers?
I think the problem up there is 4.3%. That's the problem.
It's,
It's the average bill. It's not there anymore. The average bill increase is 4.3%.
it's
3.6. Yeah, that's the problem.
But
For me, that's the problem.
But I mean, we don't have a similar kind of table for renters. And so, where we show what the average increase in rent is. So this was saying, hey, we have $100 million to put toward property tax relief or whatever you want to call it, or buying down the property tax rate. Can't we just take a slice off of it to buy down the rent as well? And if we don't increase the cap, the 2,500 to 3,250, it won't benefit many renters in the county where 3 of us reside. And if we don't increase the percentage, then that's not going to happen. We have to increase all 3 of those elements to have enough of an effect to actually help renters.
This, correct me if I'm wrong. This is not even our program. We do not even have jurisdiction over it. This is a general fund program where they make the determination as to how much money they want to put into this program every year. If they don't want to send us 104.9 and they want to send us something different, I guess this isn't even our jurisdiction. It's not even our program.
well, we have always done this.
And it's gonna go to approach next. Just so we realize this, there's a whole other chamber that's gonna have to weigh in and we're gonna reconcile with them. Is there a world where we can get this renter's credits so that an amount, I still like the 11 million, but I do love the idea of us coming together on a supported bill. If we can get it to be through the magic of Julia at an effective average tax rate of 3.999%. So we stay under the 4, using the rest of it for rental, knowing that there's a whole nother half of this conversation. And then that rental credit will be debatable in the appropriations where they can do things with it. And then in the larger step of the process. Is that a possible path?
Well, Pat, if we just stayed at 65%, have you done the numbers to, instead of going up to 80%?
I can figure that out. If you give me just a quick second.
Yeah.
It's gonna go before.
If we do that, and before we send Pat out to crunch, would that make it acceptable? If we,
I don't know.
So if the effective tax rate, that number, that 3.6, that would now go to 4.3, was at 3.999%, and we just use that difference for rental relief.
Well, how about this? I remember what was it, 2 years ago? 2 years ago, we increased property tax credit by the amount that the average bill increase was. What if we increase the rental credit by that average amount that the average tax bill increases? So you have,
Over the last 6 years.
no, it was a one point in time, so let's take that 1 year
I mean,
and then increase it by 4%.
we did not put an inflationary factor.
No, I know, but-
Inflationary factor is figured by the rent. Your area.
Right, but
on
this-
rent.
The same thought process we had way back when we increased for 1 year the property tax credit by the amount of the average bill. So it's like 13, I'm looking over here, 13.1 or 13.1% increase in the property tax credit. So that helped property taxpayers. If whatever the shakeout is between increasing the renter credit shakes out in evens with the increased average property tax bill, we increase our renter credit by that amount.
I think my property
So,
tax bill's going up $1,000.
Well, the average, so if you like around the 3.8.
yeah, I mean, what we can do,
With the.
I mean, that brings up, we didn't even do the property tax credit, and I was focused on the renter credit, but there's still also the concept of the property tax credit, which is to help lower income property taxpayers. And, you know, we could do both of those things, do percentage increase for the property tax credit and for the rental
It
credit.
is 20 minutes of 3 on Friday.
Oh, no.
You've been working on these bills. I'm trying to find out if there's a middle ground we can agree on. This is a new concept. I'm not comfortable not hearing from tax, not, you know, that administers this program to get some background and some history. I'm comfortable with putting 220 at the average, at the rate the Senate voted it. I'm comfortable with doing a renter's tax credit. I think we're trying to find something that gets the property tax increase. If we can get the renter's credit down
Cut it in half, the
to something so that if we can get the property tax increase. Right now, if we do nothing for renters, it's at 3.6%. If we could get it down to 3.9, under 4, we could get it under 4 and use that additional funds to go to renters. Would that get?
How about,
the
how about 3.2?
Can I? Scott, before you do this, yeah, this is because
So thank you.
the thing is that the program, so the reason I asked Pat to look at 65% is that, because that's where the income level is right now. And if we increase the percentage of the credit without increasing the max amount, it's not going to help people in the high rent areas, which is Chittenden County. So I'm wondering if you could tell us, have you been able to figure out that at 65%, which is staying where it is in terms of income level that's eligible right now?
So like the back of the envelope is probably somewhere between 5 and 6 million
5 and 6
to
million.
keep the income eligibility static. But
Okay.
including the 3250 and including the 15%.
Okay, 5.5 million or something like
Back
that.
of the envelope right now.
Okay, so 5.5 million for the renter credit. Because I mean, just backing into a percentage doesn't necessarily work for making the renter credit make sense. Backing into a property tax credit, a property tax percentage.
Okay, but maybe at this point,
To me, it would. Well, I just think of it as, you know, a property owner has a different set of risks as a renter. If a hot water tank, if a furnace, if a boiler breaks, it's on the person who owns the property. If it breaks, not on the renters, so they don't carry that much risk. If they want to move, end of the tenancy, they're gone. So there's a risk pool, and I think that the concept that's been done in the past on the property tax credit side, I'd be curious to see. I'm sure it would be lower if it was a 3.8% increase in the renter credit, how the math works, and if you increase the income or whatever portion of it, what that would look like and what the total dollar amount is.
How long, if you just want to see what it looks like? I'm thinking of how much time.
I want to see this rental credit as part of this bill, so it continues forward in the conversation. And if 3.8 is the starting point, just so we get out of here at a reasonable hour on Friday, knowing that approach does more and then the house does more.
I just, it's
I hear you.
It's frustrating. I've tried in good conscience and good faith to bring something
Doing great.
to the committee that would be,
Yes.
You've done well.
and to have people just be like, nope, this is my line in the sand is really frustrating and not how you negotiate in good faith.
Okay, but this also was brought on the last day.
Madam Chair, we've had the bill for like 2 days.
I know, no, we've been working on this for a week.
What if we can't agree on this, and I agree. Why don't we just pass out, put this over on the side, put 220 in, and then it's gonna move over there, and if we want to do a committee amendment, or if somebody wants to do a member amendment, we just tackle it out there.
Because doing a floor amendment on something that impacts both the yield and the budget is not a really good thing to do, because it impacts both.
Building on what you just said, if we do the 3.8 to get out of here at a reasonable hour, and then we come back on Tuesday, a restful weekend, and we talk about an adjustment or adjustment to the floor as committee members. So what you said, flipping it, move it forward at the 3.8 with the renter's credit language in there, and then we just tweak that with further discussion on Tuesday.
To do the renter's credit, you're going to have to do numbers, so you're gonna have to figure out how much money you've got, and then how that would translate into the renter's credit.
These guys are crunching numbers as we talk, so I'm pretty sure this is getting to this.
We can
Okay,
always do 3.8 now, and other committees have the opportunity to raise it if they believe that's the thing to do.
Yep, and we could too.
And they've got the budget.
Well, I mean, with all due respect, like, there's not been a lot of trust built with, I really respect your trying, Senator, but like, I don't have a lot of faith that, we vote this out, this is gonna be the end of the conversation. Like, I don't feel like there's a lot of good faith effort to try to negotiate. It's just about drawing lines in the sand.
I think we have a set a rule about questioning people's motivation.
Well, I'm observing the behavior of.
I think we have been negotiating. I think this is a new concept where people are trying to get their head around it, and we're trying to wrap some numbers. If we put renters rebate in, then it goes to committee of conference, all right? And it's going to get negotiated. If 3 members, at least of the committee, are comfortable with a 3.8% property tax.
Average property.
Average property tax, yes. Okay,
Give
we
something.
got a 0.2. How much money does that give us to put into renters?
So-
Do we know?
I've been trying to do like a super back of the envelope,
Yeah.
very preliminary. It can't be final until I can go back and do consensus. I thought we were solving for 3.9 rather than 3.8.
I'd like to be solving.
Okay,
So I will say 3.9. This is very rough and I will not hang my hat on it. And the committee can't pass it out until we've had a chance to vet these numbers, but that will get you around 6.4 million.
Okay. I've got a note says that Jake Feldman from the tax department can be here in 15 minutes to talk about the property tax credit. All right. I think we need to give some space, air, and lack of pressure to the number crunchers to see if they can figure this out so that they're comfortable. So we are going to take a break until 3 o'clock and let everybody